Grazie.
Thank
Buongiorno a
you.
tutti, un piacere essere qua con voi
Good morning.
oggi,
It's a great pleasure
oggi in
to be
Italia.
here this morning.
Should I speak English? No, Italian? Yeah. Ok, continuo in italiano, ma allora guardavo stamattina
So
la
I will speak in
presentazione sui
Italian this
dati,
morning.
le presentazioni
We've seen
sui
the
dati, su
presentation
big
on
data,
data and
e
big
quello che volevo
data
fare con
mainly.
voi è condividere un po'
I
big
wanted
data
to
in
share
the
with
city,
you big
come le
data
nostre
in the
città stanno
cities. So
cambiando
how
grazie a
our
questa
cities are
grande quantità di
changing through
dati che possiamo
that great
raccogliere.
quantity of data
Come
that we
vedete
can collect.
questa immagine fa
So
vedere
if
un
we
po' quello
take
che
that
sta
image,
cambiando oggi nelle
we can
città.
see what
Un po'
happens in the
internet che ha
cities.
cambiato le
It
nostre
is
vite
the
negli ultimi
internet which
10-20 anni,
changed our
sta
lives in
diventando
those
Internet of
15
Things,
last years.
entrando nello spazio
So
fisico,
it's becoming
sta creando una
Internet
nuova
of Things
connessione ibrida,
and
quasi
a
a
new
metà tra
condition, which is
bits and
hybrid,
atoms, tra
halfway between bits
parte
and
fisica
atoms
e
and
parte digitale.
also
Ed è
physics
quello che
and
molti
digital
chiamano
ones.
smart cities.
And
Però quello che sta
they are
dietro a
so
livello
called smart
tecnologico è
cities as
proprio il
well,
fatto
but
che
it is
internet
actually the
entrando nello
fact
spazio
that
fisico stia
internet is
diventando Internet
getting
of Things,
inside
Internet
our
delle cose.
Internet of Things
Ma faccio
mentalities.
esempio di questi vari layer
So,
digitali
giving
di
a
quello che
few
stanno cambiando.
examples
Se voi
of
guardate
what
questa
is
immagine
happening,
vedete la
um,
crescita delle
here
connessioni
we
mobili
have
del
the
pianeta
growth of the
dall'inizio.
mobile
E oggi
cognitions
può
from the
sembrare
planet at the
sorprendente che
beginning. So, what is
fosse
quite
un tempo,
surprising is that we
neanche tanti anni
had
fa,
a
in
period
cui
of
potevamo
time
vivere senza
when
connessioni
we
mobili.
could
Nel
live without any
1979,
mobile
quando
cognition in
la prima rete
1979 when
telefonica
the
mobile
first
viene creata
network
in
of
Giappone,
mobile
mondiale viene
phone
creata
was
in Giappone,
created in
viene sviluppata da
Japan,
NTT. E
um,
poi qua
and,
vedete una
and
ventina d'anni per
NTT
arrivare a 1 miliardo di
development, and
connessioni,
then
con 2,
after
3,
20
4, 5,
years'
oggi
time
6,
with
7
different
miliardi di
connections,
connessioni mobili.
6, 7 billions
Voi
of
potete chiedervi
connections
quanto
which are
ancora può
mobile.
crescere
So my
questa curva,
question
che ha
is,
7 miliardi
how
di
can
persone sul
this
pianeta,
curve
quanto
continue
ancora può
growing,
crescere?
and
Secondo
how much is
Ericsson,
it
che non ha
possible
mai
to
sbagliato
grow
una previsione in
according
questo
to
campo,
Ericsson,
noi
which
siamo a
never
queste
made any
parti e
mistake?
saremo a
We
50
are
miliardi
still
nel
here and
2020.
50
Quindi
billion in
vuol dire che quello lì
2020.
avremo 17 iPads in tasca.
It means
No,
we'll
noi siamo
have
partiti
a lot of
coniugando persone con
iPads
persone,
altogether,
poi persone
or actually it
con
means
dati,
connecting persons to
persone con
persons and
cose
persons to
con
data
dati
and
e sempre di più
persons to
M2M,
things,
machine to
and
machine, cose che parlano con altre
M2M,
cose,
machine
come
to
se ogni
machine
atomo fuori del
connection.
mondo fisico stesse diventando sia un sensore
So
sia un
really, we
attore.
are creating
Beh,
new
questo, il
sensors.
risultato di questo è una
And that
grandissima
is the
quantità
result. In fact,
di
we
dati
have
che
a high
produciamo
quantity of
ogni
data
momento.
which
Big
do
data.
we
Il
do produce
90%
each
dei dati
moment. So
del
big
mondo
data,
oggi, e come dati
90% of the data in
come
the world today has
informazioni,
been
è stato
created in
creato
the last
negli
2 years.
ultimi 2 anni. Beh, in quel 90%
And
come
that
quantità,
90%
cioè
as
in questa
quantity
quantità
is
degli ultimi
impressive,
due
and
anni voi avete un
in
sacco
the
di
last two
cose non
years you
necessariamente
have a lot of
interessanti.
things which are
Nella
not
prima
always
parte,
fascinating, but
prima che
this is the
arrivassimo
first
al
part actually.
2014,
Before
voi avete
getting in
tutto, avete la storia
2014, you have
dell'umanità, avete
everything. You have the
inevitabilmente, avete
history of
Shakespeare,
human
avete
beings,
Molière.
you have
La
Shakespeare,
qualità
you
non
have
è la
Molière
stessa,
and
ma la
Dante,
quantità
but the
è
quality is
quello
not the same, but the
la quantità è
quantity
quello che è
is
cambiato radicalmente
high.
negli ultimi anni.
And this is exactly what
Un'altra
changed.
definizione di big data che trovo molto
Big data
interessante, data
definition,
da
which is quite
Michael
interesting,
Batty,
is
professore a UCL
Michael
Londra, mio
Batty,
collega, che
UCL
Batty dice big
in
data is
teaching
what
in
you can put
London.
in an Excel
Big data
spreadsheet.
is
È
what you
quello che
can
non
put
riuscite
in
a
an
mettere in un
Excel
foglio
sheet.
Excel. È
Well,
una definizione abbastanza
impossible to
profonda,
put
nel
in
senso
fine.
che quando
Why?
avete big
It
data
means
avete
that
bisogno di nuovi
when you have big
strumenti.
data,
Gli
you need
strumenti
new
tradizionali
tools.
non funzionano più.
Tools which
Avete
are
bisogno di nuovi strumenti
different from the
per
traditional ones,
riuscire a
and new
salvare,
tools in
manipolare,
order to
visualizzare,
save and
analizzare.
manipulate and visualize, but
Allora, quello che volevo
analyze
fare con
also
voi
data.
stamattina è farvi vedere
So what we want to
alcuni
do here is
esempi
to
di big data
see a few
nelle città,
examples of big data
partendo
in
da
the
quella che di
cities,
solito nel mondo della
starting
ricerca viene chiamata
from
opportunistic data. Dati che
opportunistic
vengono
data.
prodotti per un
So
motivo, ma che
data
possiamo usare per
produced for a
qualcos'altro.
reason,
Quello che vedete qui è la città di New
used for
York,
something else. So
una
here,
visualizzazione che
Lisbon
arrivò al Museo
city,
d'arte moderna di New York,
from the
da
MoMA
Pedro
in
Cruz,
New
il
York, given
laboratorio
by
alla
Pedro
MIT.
Cruz, and
Lisbona
made it
mappata con miliardi di
by
punti tra
himself.
i
So
bus della rete
Lisbon,
di
a lot
taxi.
of points
Per la
taken
prima
from
volta
the
oggi,
taxi
negli ultimi anni, riusciamo a
network.
leggere una
So
città
we
in
have
questo modo,
been able
quasi
to
come un
read a city in
organismo
that
vivente. Non possiamo
direction, like
farlo
a
solo
living
dopo qualche
organism,
decennio fa. La
and
città era una città statica.
so
Questi
this
romani
is
che
the
avrebbero chiamato la
city.
urbs, che potevamo
At the
mappare, la
time it
forma
was
fisica di una
orbs,
città.
or
Oggi riusciamo a
static
leggerla come
city,
qualcosa di
and then we
dinamico.
can read
E
it
se
in
poi
a
prendete
different
questi
way, which
dati
is
potete
dynamic. So if
analizzarli
you take those
e
data, you can analyze
cercare
them,
di
and also
trarre
trying
insegnamenti
to
utili per migliorare la città.
have
Questi
new
sono gli stessi dati
results this. This is New York, so green cab, yellow,
dot for cab,
Questo è JFK, l'aeroporto
for someone getting in the cab. So this is JFK Airport. If you zoom, look at Manhattan and all the suburban areas. So what happens if we want to share mobility, and today we want to share a lot of things, but also our life. Like Airbnb, we share flats, rooms, and we want to share as well mobility as in New York. So we have two different dots here in Manhattan. You have really so many travels collecting them and connecting them throughout the day. If you want then to do it precisely, it is not easy because you have a lot of quantity of a lot of data. And PNAS recent research in order to develop a system on network science, so science and study of those networks, to quantify as well the mobility to share in Manhattan, for example. So let's imagine to know exactly the destination at a precise moment of time. And here they have the sharing networks to tell you how many travels were necessary, and this is quite important and surprising, because you could get to any destination and you can know exactly and precisely where to go and how many taxis and cars and so on. The paper is quite recent, but the first results were published and found a few years ago, results which were used by Uber. So we've been collaborating with Uber trying to connect two people together and share the same travel. So this is exactly what happens all over the world. So here you have really real-time information to share the different opportunities of travel. And in the future, we'll have other technologies like self-driving. This is a machine, self-driving machine, and the machine is making a scan of the environment similar to the human eye, but it is made through a LiDAR system, and with the 3D model, you use it as an input to move in the space. So here, the point is not that you're not driving. The point is that the machine can give you, can drive and then can host different persons inside. So you create a hybrid system between public and private transport. And here, if you put together that aspect, the fact that we can share the car with the previous one, so we can really, share the travels, unique ones, well, you make a combination of those two facts and you mix them in order to have like a new way of living a city in Paris and Milan, New York, and you have like 20%, only 20% of the cars that we have today. So imagine how much it would be interesting to use, that new technology even today. So if you have a look of the future, well, then it changes, for example, in handling the traffic, managing the traffic. In that case, this is a case that we have in our daily life. And when we have cars which had been created, so you have people knowing exactly where you are, so no need to stop. You can leave the people crossing, trying to avoid accidents, like here. Let's see. So this is work done in the past, trying to analyze the different crossing points to see how it is handled. You have a lot of interesting information, a lot of directions, getting from one part, turning, getting right, and so on. So you can solve this kind of problem, which is quite interesting, to optimize that bottlenecks, for example, the bottlenecks that we find here in Singapore, with the same numbers of cars on right and left, with the handle on the left, with a system based on in smart technologies, and then the other one on the right is totally different system. See the difference, the same number of cars, but the difference from left and right. For delays and queues, and you handle the traffic really in a different way. Those crossing points, of course, are one of the main fundamental things of transports, because you have actually two floors together using the same space. So with a crossing point, you have an effect, which is really virtuous on the whole system. Right. So now, what about the data we collect in an opportunistic way? Opportunistic because it is needed for taxi networks, but not only. Other data is connected to production. So we take a picture, we post it on Twitter and Facebook, and we are using the Flickr data as well, which gives a lot of images. And you take the images and you can find interesting things. So that project, for example, is being done together with the mayor of Florence, the previous one, and he came to us to see how those touristic flows were made in the cities, and generally they collect a lot of energy, so you need to go and make interviews to tourists, so mechanisms which are very, very difficult. And actually we use the online data to understand the dynamics of tourism. So you see here Flickr pictures where you can see in Tuscany here what happens. This is the downtown Florence. So very interesting to see how the traffic and the flows are made, and you can zoom and focus on the center. You see the old bridge and so on, getting really on the building. So if you want to be even more sophisticated, you can go and see the precise moment when the picture has been made, creating the trajectories, and then that is important because you can see, for example, the American people and tourists in Tuscany. So where are the American people, on the left or on the right? This is the question. Americans on the left, raise your hands. And the Americans on the right, raise your hands. 50-50. So Americans are on the left. So if you come from the US, you come to Italy once every 10 years. At the end, you go to the principal places, and you see Elephant's Part, which means really, Pisa, Florence, Perugia, Rome. But then, if you're Italians, well, you've been a lot of times to those cities, and then you look for something different. Small cities, new territories, like the Elba Island, or no American Flickr has been seen, well, whereas you have a lot of Europeans. But then another project which is quite fascinating for our students, trying to understand where are the best places for parking in Barcelona, for example. Also, for parties, and they have published an article showing that you have a surprising connection between the presence of parties and the English speaking persons. Anyway, other things, for example, analyzing a picture, trying to see the details and see if the picture has interesting parameters connected to drought in that case. Drought, which is a applied in Spain and all southern Europe. So you're trying to monitor drought through sensors, and you can use those sensors that we all have with us, for example, with our smartphones, to monitor how the drought situation is changing on the territory. So Los Ojos del Mundo is the name of the project, to use our eyes to understand what happens on the territories. This is important for Flickr. But then Twitter as well, you have a lot of things told on cities. On the video here, we'll see a project on Twitter last year where we took 40 million tweets and we did analyze everything, discovering that the length of tweets are proportion to the enthusiasm and how people are excited for a certain event. So tweets come from golf tournament in America. 2012 actually data analyzed last year. You see here 40,000 tweets, and you will see the dots on the screen. So very, very short tweets. Short, the shortest and the longest. Look, the average is the yellow line. And then you see the densification of tweets. You tweet more, so more enthusiasm in the system. So the same thing every day, you know, before and after the tournament, in that case, golf one. So, in a way, those tweets tell us something about our life, how we tweet, how we use it. And when you see the curves, which are normal, changing according to the number of tweets on the systems, so the answer is like decreasing or increasing as far as the logarithm are concerned, according to the excitement of the people. Last thing is linked to our collection of data. Which kind of data? Data we find in cities, like hunting data. But then here you have a new category trying to collect it and diffuse them through sensors, as we said. We have a project here which was very interesting even this summer. It is a project started about the e-waste flows. So if you take a computer like this one, you know everything. Each chip on the computer, you know where it has been made and placed on the planet and moved, and till the machine gets on your table. So if you do not use it for years and you sell it, someone probably throws it away and you not know anything about it. But now we have everything of that chain of production, and we do know what happens afterwards. So we have like a supply chain, but not the removal one. So sometimes it is what happened. We have a lot of, you know, waste, electronic waste sent in Africa or elsewhere. So we do not know what happens, and a lot of illegal flows of waste through to and through different countries. So what about waste collection? We didn't find any data available about waste, so we worked with Qualcomm to project it. And like a cell phone, we have a battery which is very, long, and the position is to share it on the network. So you have a system a bit more complex than GPS, because it would not fit or work everywhere, but you try to understand where it is and then gives the information to a server. So this is the first experience in Seattle. 500 persons, 3,000 waste with a smart label on each waste.
E dopo averli etichettati tutti abbiamo iniziato
And
a seguire.
after labeling it, we followed them.
Qua vedete 3.000 oggetti.
You can see 3,000 objects when they have been released in the environment. And after a few days, you see Seattle places here, and a lot of traces are very long, but it's quite chaotic as well. You go to Chicago, then you change your mind, then you go to California.
La sinfonia degli addii. Beh, allora cosa volete fare con questo? La prima cosa che volete
Great.
fare è
What shall we do with this one? We can collect those traces, optimize the system, and if you look in the network, we have a lot of papers, scientific ones, using those data, trying to understand how to optimize not only the supply chain, but also what happens after. So we can discover the more energy that we put to move things than in recycling objects. So it means that we can rethink the whole chain, the whole value chain. So then those data, if you share it with persons, you can then create new dynamics of big data. Big data means you know a lot about our environment, and also we know more about the consequences that we're doing. So through the information, we can eventually change our behaviors. And you have a lot of examples also on these ones. You have papers to entitle the person really to change their way of behaving. And in a way, we have lived different experiences as a person telling us she was drinking plastic bottles, water in plastic bottles, but then after seeing the path, I mean, where those plastic bottles go, she stopped drinking water from plastic bottles. So that can really change our states of mind and our behaviors. A lot of labels were ending their lives in different ports, and labels are coming from cell phones, having a different plan, data plan, not an international roaming, but we were losing actually those traces. So what we did is to make a project worldly with a special reporting about those wastes, and we discovered illegal and legal waste management, and traces are all electronic wastes going from different places, from the United States to Asia, illegally and legally as well. So once again, big data can allow us to understand better what happens, and also how to fix issues, or some of the issues. And we also discovered something by chance when we had a thief coming in our Boston offices, and he took, a few things, even labels telling us where things were going, and this is what happened. So let's watch the video. We sent 30 laptops all over the world, allowing them to share snapshots of their life. One day in our lab, one of the self-reporting machines, we noticed a burglary a number of items were stolen, including the machines that records images. What did they want from that? And where it ended up? The device reported a GPS location and much more. A suspect taking pictures, a suspect wearing t-shirts. The Met Police took care of that one. What did we learn from that accident or incident? That object talks back to us. They can tell us unexpected stories. And remember, stealing from MIT is a bad idea. Right, so to conclude, last project in Italy last year, we had that incredible opportunity of the 2 pads in Milan for Expo, co-op commercial center, and we had a box projected by ourselves as a content, and we wanted to imagine different sensors of Internet of Things to change the experience in a mall. So we did not want to have this. It is a great picture of Andrea Sgulsi, great photographer, but this image is quite foolish and unpleasant of malls with the interaction of people. We wanted to have Italo Calvino's idea. Italo Calvino's wrote different novels, and Mr. Palomaro, traveling to Paris, getting in a store. Mr. Palomari comes from the province and started to think of all the stories of the projects, of the dairy products, and is like in a museum, like in the Louvre, and the mall becomes a museum, like in the Louvre. Near each object you have the presence of civilization and taking really a new shape. So this is what happens. We know a lot about the stories, we know a lot about products, where do they come from. A bottle of wine, you know where it comes from, the exposure of the vineyard, and the temperature, and the when it was put in the bottle, and then those information are not when you are inside the mall, because you still need to use the limited label on the bottle or on the product. And the idea to have the object telling a story, this is quite passionating, and this is an English mall, British mall, trying that experience in Korea. So you take your smartphone, you make a scan of the product, telling you a lot of information of that product. Then see the interaction. It's quite incredible. This is the tube, and there's not so many interactions between people. So we were interested to find if technology could bring that interaction in the supermarket, the mall. So this is a traditional one, Guttuso painting. Look at the interaction between people and products, and people through the product. So we really wanted to do it, putting all together on a horizontal table. It is an interface which is very beautiful, and we used it for thousands of years, and tables are used to share experiences, and on the tables you have a lot of Kinect sensors as 3D sensor, very, very, used in Xbox by Microsoft, and to recognize a person, its movement, and also how the person interacts. So the idea is that while you get near to a product, it gives you different information which are useful. So if you take an apple, in a second you can take it, but then if you need 5 seconds you discover more on the apple, like here for example. And with much more time you can really have the image of the whole production. So we've used it in the mall, like a theater, to see everything from the beginning, from the entrance of the products, and touching them. So touching them, you can really have their story telling the product. Of course, while you're touching it, you're having an experience about the bottle, about the apple, about the fruit, and whatever. And then an aggregate dynamic gives you more information put on the web about big data on the product. So what is being revealed about the product to be visible as well inside the mall. So that store was built like this with beautiful shelving building, and the idea is that when you buy something, the product tells you its story and where it comes from, how many kilometers, and so on. So big data in that case is a tool to have more infos on things to be bought, to make different choices, which we do hope are better. In that video you will see the interaction inside the store.
E finirei qua. Grazie.
Great, and this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.